Interestingly enough, I love that they've already covered a lot of technical topics on training your AI and ML models. But what I really want to dig into is the idea of whether you train your AI model or system or use commercially available system out there, how do you really ensure the ethical, how do you really address the ethical concerns, any concerns about the cybersecurity and privacy of the data that is used within those systems? So quickly, just from a background perspective, I'm the Chief Information Officer at SimplePractice, which is a healthcare technology organization. My background includes a lot of research and professional and academic practice in cybersecurity, data privacy, AI, and ML as well. So without getting any extra details there, but just to get into the presentation, we're going to really break it down into four main topics. So the first one, we're going to talk a little bit about the introduction and really what the problem is. We're going to talk about the concerns that people have with AI and ML and their usage within a commercial or enterprise environment. How can we address some of those issues? And then finally, what are some of the action items or takeaways that we can take after this session so we can start doing immediately? So just thinking from a context perspective, right? We see AI tools everywhere. And while they have several examples pointed out here, people use commercially available tools like ChatGPT and Bard to now augment or supplement their current job responsibilities. People use it for now even to learn more about different topics, schedule their times and days, and so on and so forth. We see it all the time. You see it in your Netflix subscription when it comes to movies recommendations, in generating or seeing news that are recommended for you, and in financial and business decisions. Just think about it. ML models, machine learning models, can be used to be trained on certain data, right, to help you make certain decisions. You can say, how do I predict certain attrition of customers, maybe based on historical data and based on customer behavior. But with these positives, right, of how do we use the AI and ML components or systems, the idea is to really start thinking about how do we address some of the dilemmas and challenges that people have. A lot of the times, whether it's a system that you develop or a system you use from a commercial perspective, you want to make sure that you answer the question. The first question is, are your decisions made by the AI and ML process fair? I saw even a question in the Slack channel earlier saying that we should not be trusting decisions made by a computer. Now, are those decisions transparent? How were they made, and to what extent do they include certain data components that we need? And then when we talk about transparency, just coming from an academic background, you know that quantitative data is not everything that you need to consider. There is also qualitative components when it comes to using certain data for training the models. And finally, are these models really invading personal privacy? And we will talk a little bit more about that as well. So with that said, trying to get to the slide here. A lot of people feel differently, right, regarding the use of AI, whether it's developing it internally or really just making sure that they use some other models. And there are companies that actually have completely banned the use of AI, where there are companies that have embraced it. And there are companies or organizations that really focus on, let's do this the right way without causing any potential issues. So what are we trying to solve? Well, we want to reap the benefits of using AI and ML models, but we also want to ensure that any automated decision-making processes that come from the use of these components are based on sound cybersecurity and privacy principles, that they're ethical, and then that they include the appropriate data components that you need to worry about. So what are some of the concerns that we're seeing across the board? Well, the ethical maze is really complex when it comes to different uses of AI and ML. So the first component is whether your model is biased and whether it provides fair decisions. One of the interesting things is that depending on the data, that's how your model behaves. Similar to how Dave said, when you train a certain model, right, you have to make sure they have the appropriate data. Well, what if the data is biased? What if the data is looking at certain components that are already biased, whether in society, whether in automated decision-making, whether in cybersecurity? So we have to ensure that if we build our own models or if we use external models, we have to understand where that data is coming from, what the data has, and how do you really start preventing for that bias component. We need to talk about algorithm transparency. What are we using for these AI and ML models? I've worked with different components from neural network to ANNs to XGBoost trees, random forests, and so on and so forth. And what I've learned is that we need to understand where and how this get trained, where does the feedback information come from, and where do we get the data from overall? How about consent? If I were in the European Union right now and operating an AI model, I would be concerned because GDPR has specific provisions about data consent, privacy, especially data consent for automated decision-making and automated data processing. So how is the data collected, stored, and used? Which models can do what? What are your terms of service with your customers if you're developing your own model, or even if you're using an external commercially available model? And then finally, this is a big thing for me, accountability. Who is accountable if an AI causes harm, right? Because if a computer makes the decision and you solely rely on computer, then there is no accountability. Are you just gonna lock down the computer or put it somewhere? The idea is we need to make sure that we have the appropriate frameworks on how we use certain things. I come from the healthcare technology background, so I always think healthcare. Think about AI having certain effects or certain prescription that might happen. I'm talking years from now, right? That could cause harm to someone. Talking about business decision that could cause harm to someone. So we need to be aware of some of these concerns. What are some of the cybersecurity concerns? Well, we saw how we can use AI to really help us on the cyber defense. But who says that you cannot do the same thing to really power cyber attacks, right? So as a malicious actor, or if you're trying to work from the blue side of things on the defense side, you really need to start thinking that using AI or relying solely on AI could also cause issues, because then it's a competition of two models potentially when people are powering AI attacks. There are AI weaknesses out there that we've seen that can be exploited to manipulate input of data and training models to make these misguided decisions. Think about it. What if I fed my model with all the wrong data? Or what if I fed someone else's model with all the wrong data? Are you still going to rely on that? How do you know? What if I found the repository or the source of that data? What are some of the controls? Right now, commercial products don't have adequate controls or really cyber control framework. And then finally, there are unintended consequences in which AI models know how to behave don't know how to behave on unknown data. We saw some issues with the Bing search and others, but what is that challenge there? And then from a privacy perspective, we see a lot of this, right? A lot of people are going to start asking themselves, what does ChatGPT or other models know about me? Now everybody going and thinking about AI and ML. Where is this really going to go? So the idea is that from a data collection, what you always have to ask the question when you're using a model, what data is collected, how long is it stored, and who has access to it? But if it's publicly available data, how do you handle data consent when it comes to pulling the data out or processing the data? Were you given permission to do that or not? There is this ability where we say we anonymize data a lot in different settings, and a lot of people in healthcare do this. But re-identification of data now is a lot more possible. It's made possible by these AI systems and tools because the computer is faster, it can learn quicker, and potentially re-identify any data that could lead to significant primary concerns. Finally, we're looking at misuse and access of data, where data might be shared outside of defined parameters. And we'll talk about a case study in a second that might come out on how these commercial tools could use that type of data. And finally, the most concerning from a privacy perspective, in my opinion, is that you could be profiled by an AI model or an AI system. So how do you really address profiling based on existing data that could already be biased? Some case studies I wanted to bring out because I saw this, right? So who's accountable for deaths caused by self-driving AI systems? We talk about accountability, and this was about Tesla's fatal autopilot crash. We saw data breaches, confirmed data breaches by the, by ChatGPT and OpenAI that happened within their system regarding user information, not the data yet. We also saw an example when an attorney, this was 3 days ago, when an attorney used ChatGPT to complete certain legal paperwork and forms, only to find out that ChatGPT made up case studies that were referenced in those responses. So how do I trust these decisions now that are being made by these tools? To what extent and how do we use them? So there are a couple ways to address issues and to really start thinking about them. There's still no set frameworks and regulations that you can use, but you can start thinking about it from a corporate perspective on how you can use it within your organization. It all starts with AI design and use. Whether you're deploying your own models, training your own models, or deciding to use commercial models, you have to design appropriate component. Do your diligence, look at the regulations surrounding you, what frameworks are available to you, and then start doing research around it. So this is a cyclic process because you want to ensure that you cover all of these components when it comes to it. So when we talk about AI, there are pathways that we can achieve either secure use of AI, ethical AI, or even privacy guaranteed AI. So how do we do ethical AI? Well, consent is the #1 component because you don't want to really violate any data subject rights, if I may use that terminology, when it comes to data usage. You want to make sure that if you develop your own AI, you develop your own fairness and transparency policy that people can see on how your models behave. Then talk about accountability. As an organization, if you develop a model, do you take accountability for any decisions that your AI model might do? Or if you use a commercial products out there, do you work with them where they have a certain liability issues that they're responsible for and certain that you are? Because at the end of the day, when you offer AI products, accountability is going to be front and center. And finally, monitor the performance of those and make sure that your AI models, whether developed or commercial, are really, really inclusive and have an inclusive design of the data that needs to be in place. But how do we ensure privacy then in AI models and AI systems? So we need to start with data minimization. How do we really remove and start removing these personal identifiers that might impact privacy for individuals whose data is being used in that component? We need to focus on differential privacy and federated learning so we can actually have more distributed systems and not centralized systems. Because with a federated learning, you have an option to train your model and have different sources of truth, right, that might not be poisoned by a potential external attacker. And then finally, use homomorphic encryption, where the data is being used as encrypted as an encrypted ciphertext. And finally, looking at the security, the cybersecurity part, is how do we strengthen the cybersecurity when using this? Well, secure AI infrastructure is the beginning of what you want to do when it comes to really ensuring that cybersecurity in the AI component. Data protection and data encryption is important. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to have the policies in place, you have to have the appropriate components in place. And then use AI to both help you and test your environment as well. Well, you can use AI for your blue team. You can also use AI for your red team. You can use AI to generate phishing attacks that are pretty clever and could help you really identify potential weaknesses within your organization. Use AI to your advantage to both test again and defend your organization. And finally, do adversarial training. So what are some of the takeaways and what do we really need to start thinking about? I always want to end some of these presentations with a part where we can all take some action items home and make this a better use case for everybody. So in the process on how you want to take immediate action, regardless of where you fall on that concern, whether you're on that scale regarding the use of AI, whether you're concerned, excited, or in between, I always recommend that you can use these several steps to start getting comfortable with either technology or calm down your excitement. So you can actually fall somewhere in the middle most of the time. So the first step is really to define the use cases of AI and ML models or systems that you're using. Decide, are you going to develop your own artificial intelligence and machine learning models? The question is, if you do that, do you have the appropriate data? Do you have the appropriate consent? Start documenting these things within your business case or use case for your organization. Think about this. If someone, even if it's not your team, if someone else is developing AI and ML models, let's say you want to figure out certain click-through rate on news articles, right? And you have certain data that tell you behavior, website behavior that could lead to that. Start thinking about all the concerns or all the surrounding challenges that might come with that. The second part is using external models. Do you use the open source models that are out there right now, like Llama and ChatGPT, Bard, and so on and so forth? There's so many right now. And if you do, how do you trust the decisions that those models are making? Do you have visibility and transparency into the algorithms or the frameworks or how they're done? Or do you find a partner or provider which can share those details with you? Might not be open source, but might be a provider that can help you really understand what type of processes they use and how they use them. What are the specific outcomes you're trying to accomplish or achieve? You need to start thinking about what are your goals and how are you going for them. And start educating and advocating either for the use or against the use, depending on the use case of your AI and ML models. Develop your data governance data governance policies, and make sure people understand them, not just see them on a shelf where they take a lot of dust over the time. Make sure that if you develop your models, that they're fair in their decision-making process and there's transparent use either of the algorithms or the process behind. And finally, test, and monitor results when it comes to this. Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that certain things are done in an ethical manner, in an ethical way. And then before you go live on any models or you use those models to make decisions for your business or yourself, for that matter. So I'll stop there. The last slide is just a summary. And Rob, I'll share it back with you.